Welcome to Your Next Level Now with your host, Bob Donnell. As a human behaviorist, Bob has helped people from every walk of life reach their next level, both personally and professionally. Whether a celebrity, professional athlete, or entrepreneur, Bob has helped them align their behavior with their desired result in their life and career. This is Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell.
Welcome, everybody. Make sure everybody's getting on and getting connected. I just wanted to welcome everybody and tell you we're here for Next Level by Association. Where we're all about connecting, communication, and our community. So just some housekeeping before we get started. If you could limit your distractions when Bob and Bill come on, to just turn off your cameras. And if you're going to be walking around, do that by turning off mics and cameras for us. Go ahead and grab something to drink and something to write with and take notes. And then just wanted to do a few announcements. On Wednesdays, we have our group coaching at 10 o'clock in the morning. Members, go ahead, and if you're unable to attend the group coaching at 10, go ahead and text in a question to Haley and she'll get it to Bob. Also, the Mondays have the NLBA virtual training at 10 o'clock. And if anybody has anything coming up, just let us know. You can either, and during the conversation that Bob was going to be having with Bill, if you have a question or anything, just go ahead and raise your hand. And if anybody has anything that they want to say, go ahead and put it in the chat. But welcome again, and I'd like to have Bob and Bill come on.
All right. Well, thanks, Flo.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, guys, welcome to Next Level by Association. You know, this is something we've done for 11 years in person over dinner. For those of you that aren't familiar with it, we've done this for 11 years over a private dinner that I've hosted, and it's been great. In the last year and a half, we started doing some virtual as well. And then obviously when COVID hit, we started doing virtual only. And but it's always the treat for me is that I get to just connect with some really cool people. And but one of the biggest treats is to bring on people that I've met in the past that maybe we haven't been able to bring into a dinner or something like that. And it's so fun when you think about how you meet people, where you meet people, the different circumstances, the different affiliations. And this gentleman is somebody that I got a chance to meet. I don't know, it had to have been 12 years ago, 11, 12 years ago. And through Lynn Rose. And Lynn's going to join us. She's going to try and hop on in a little bit when she gets out of her meeting. But Lynn Rose is just a stellar human being and just an amazing artist, singer, songwriter, composer. I mean, everything. She's just really, really talented. And she was hosting an event. And she said, "Hey, Bob, why don't you come by this event?" And so I went and sat in on this event, and she introduced me to Bill. And we had this, just a brief, quick conversation. There's a lot of people around. And so we just had a brief conversation. But I remember just being really impressed by him, by his demeanor and by his ability to be relatable to people in the room. And it didn't matter whether they were in the television industry or whether they were, coaches or whether they were speakers. It didn't matter. His ability to be relatable was really what fascinated me. And then I found out about his background. Then I found out about a little bit about what he did. If you guys have ever seen the show MacGyver, this is a guy who knows the ins and outs of MacGyver. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we had a conversation the other day, and we just really got involved instead of a 10, 15-minute conversation. It went out, I don't know, 40 minutes or so. And we just had a really good conversation about life. And, we all we approach life from a lot of different perspectives because of our backgrounds. But to listen to how he thinks, I think you guys will be really fascinated. So sit back, grab your favorite drink, and let's go ahead and get started. Bill, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. I'm glad to join your group. We did have a really good reconnecting catch-up chat before, and I know that you guys have some really good times on these discussions. So I'm very pleased to be here and to meet everybody else, and just go with the flow.
I love it. Love it. Well, I got to ask you, because when you were at Lynn's event that time, do you remember what prompted you to be there? I mean, you're in the television industry, you've written, you have directed, you've produced, you've done all this. What prompted you to be at an event of Lynn Rose?
Well, one of the things I was trying to remember is exactly which event it was that we met at. Was it one of her WOW?
I think it was a WOW. Yes, it was WOW.
Well, that's an acronym for that, I believe, for Lynn. She can verify this, of course, is a World Without Walls. But there may be some other acronyms she's thrown in there since then. But she is, well, as you said, she is an amazing human being, and just very inspirational, extremely talented entertainer and performer. But also she has a wonderful attitude about life, and also a very uplifting way about herself, and is very interested in the deeper aspects,
Yes.
Everything from the spiritual aspects of life to ways in which you can literally lift up your experience. And that program of hers was it was a class learning to be better speakers, learning to be a better representation of yourself, to bring out the best parts of yourself, and to learn how to communicate well with others, but also it was about connecting with yourself and knowing what is the best path for you going forward with your various businesses or enterprises. And I was just so impressed with her from the very first time I met her that I wanted to, and I attended a number of her seminars and webinars and everything. And I've always been impressed with what she's had to say and who she is. We've been good friends, and that'll continue forever.
Yeah.
And I'm just very impressed with her, and always have been impressed with what she's had to say. And I've learned a lot, because I think when you are able to really open yourself up and listen to what others have to say, we learn from each other, no matter what our professions have been, no matter what our life experiences have been, because it's all different, but it's also all similar and connected if we are open enough to see and hear and feel those connections.
Mm-hmm. So true. And that really impressed me. I mean, I said it earlier, but it really impressed me that you were there really to learn. You were there to be fully vested in it. It wasn't like you were auditing it, like auditing your college. You were really vested. And I remember one of the exercises, and I've used this before, but I remember one of the exercises where we had to sit facing another person, and we just had to stare and be present. And I remember her making a comment that, probably some of you men having to sit and stare into another man's eyes is probably very uncomfortable, and probably hasn't happened for you in a long time, if ever. And do you remember that exercise?
I do. Yeah. Yeah.
That part was a very powerful exercise. Bill, you've been around the television industry a long time, and you have seen a lot of things. You've seen a lot of things come, a lot of things go. You've seen, big name actors that fell from grace and were nobody now. But you have really been instrumental in helping the industry get its foundation. I think when you start talking about writing or directing or producing, I think that's the platform that an actor gets to play on. But without that, the actor has nothing, in my opinion. And so what do you think has been the pivotal point for you in the industry, watching it go through all these cycles?
Well, that's interesting. The pivotal point.
probably several for you because you've
Yeah,
seen.
yeah. It. I was actually talking about that part of it today with my wife, because she is not in the entertainment business. She is a champion horsewoman and trainer and clinician and teacher and coach. Um, Her world is the world of equus, and but talking about the system of the entertainment business, of the clash, sometimes the blend of the business side and what would be more the creative or art side. And I think one of the pivotal points has been, and unfortunately, it has made some things more challenging. The entertainment business, and I've been involved heavily in television, but also in feature films, but it has become exceedingly corporate in its structure and in its mindset as to how the business end of it works. That has made things more challenging. When I started in the entertainment business, there were still only 3 networks really to sell projects to, and the studios were entities unto themselves in many ways. Now, some were at that time they were owned by other corporations, but the people who ran the studios thought both from a business side, but also really wanted to make good movies. They wanted to make a lot of money. Obviously, they had shareholders to deal with. Now, studios and networks are really a ledger line on the balance sheet of these massive, vertically integrated corporations. It makes the attitude of how they go forward with things much different. Um, and you saw that happening, and it changed somewhat the nature of how we, as storytellers, had to proceed. There was a time, for instance, in the feature film end of the business, where the development departments were the ones that had executives, and you would pitch your projects to them, and the projects that went forward started in the development end, and you worked your way through the process of going through writing a script, getting all your notes back, starting to pull the other elements together. The distribution end wasn't really contributing to that process until much later in the process. And it was the development side that decided what projects were going to be made, which projects were going to be greenlit to film. Now that has flipped. Now, if the distribution and marketing divisions don't know how to market and distribute your concept, you don't go forward.
Wow.
So it part of the challenge has been, and it's different for someone who's at the very top of the food pyramid, still challenging, but someone like Steven Spielberg, for instance, has a different life within the business than most of the rest of the people. And that's very understandable. He's an amazing talent, and he's had amazing success, and that should be rewarded. Um, but it has made how you have to operate at several levels. The story that you want to tell, the movie you want to make, the television series you want to present, you may have the full depth of what you see, for instance, a television series flowing through several seasons. But you have to be able to distill that down to something very simple in order to present it, in order to pitch it, and in order to sell it. Because the executives that you are selling to, they then have to turn around and take what you have presented to them and talk to their bosses. So you remember the old game of what do they call it, telephone tag or something? The messages would go from one person to another to another to another, and you would start off by saying something like, next level by association is a great idea. And by the time it got down to the end, it would say, if you're associated with next level, you're strange.
Right. So true.
But one of the things that is still pivotal is people want to make movies and television series and tell stories. We will have a never-ending connection through stories, and what we are all hoping for in being able to move forward with film and television projects is that you find those executives at the networks and studios who really do want to work well and know how to work well with the creative side of things, and they are there, and they're very good. And you pray to be working with those people.
Right.
There are others um, that haven't yet learned how best to handle that connection, and that makes it more challenging. And that doesn't mean that all writer, producers, and directors know what they're doing either. So,
Got it.
um,
You bring up some interesting point, because there's so many different personalities that come into play in a television or a movie set, right? You've got some with great big huge egos, you have some with no egos, you have some that want to be control freaks, you have some that, you've got all these different personalities. How did you find navigating those waters early on versus, like, say today? It's probably different for you early on than later on, right?
well, yes, but and that's because of what you hopefully learn from your maturation in life and from life experience, and you get better at things. Hopefully, that is the course we like to follow. That we learn, we improve, we do better. When we know better, we do better. Um, it's very interesting the point you brought up, because in our culture today, not just within the entertainment business, but in specifically our Western culture, and clearly our American culture, we are living in an era which is the cult of personality, and that has some pluses, but it has some real downsides too, because um, all those myriad personalities and the noise that comes out of that, the celebrity nature of things, can cause many of us to miss the substance, to miss what really matters. Um, in the beginning, I came out from the East Coast, where I grew up, primarily in Pittsburgh, and I went to college back in Ithaca, New York, and but I always knew from high school that I wanted to make movies and television shows. And so when I came out to California, I didn't really know anybody. I had to work my way in. So I had a bit of that starstruck feeling of wondering, am I ever going to figure out how to get into this business? I can remember the day I arrived, and I drove around literally, like an excited kid, looking at all the entrances to the major studios. And I got back to the apartment of a friend who had come out about 9 months earlier, and came back into their apartment and sat down on the couch. I was so excited. I'd seen all the studios, and then it hit me: how the hell do you get into those studios?
Yeah.
So it has been a growing experience. When I first started in the mailroom at Universal Studios, and that was quite an experience, where I got to meet a lot of people. And out of that experience, I went on to co-produce, associate produce an independent feature film starring Katharine Hepburn. And after that, I got an offer from Grant Tinker, who was Mary Tyler Moore's husband and the president of MTM Enterprises, to come be the director of drama development and production, working under him and his vice president, as they were starting with the Lou Grant series and moving into the other drama series and television movies they were going to do. And I still remember the thing that he told me in welcoming me to the company, because MTM was a real class act with all the comedies that they had, and clearly they moved into being a class act in dramas. The Lou Grant series was starting then, but they went on to do Hill Street Blues and White Shadow and Saint Elsewhere, and so. But what he said to me was, in this business, you are going to meet the very best of human beings, and you're also going to meet the absolute worst, and you've got to learn how to deal with both. So back to that sense of the egos and personalities you were talking about. You really had to find a centeredness to yourself in how you dealt with other people. Otherwise, you could be like a tennis ball, getting battered back and forth between all the various strong egos and personalities. I found through some hard knocks and some wise lessons learned, that what does seem to work best, and it continues to this day, people will respond more positively, more substantially to kindness than they will to fear and power. You may get results from fear and power, but they will not be as good, and you will not maintain the level of relationships from that end if you ever lose that level of power that you had when you were expressing yourself that way.
Wow, that's a great, I just want to stop you for there, because I think we think that somebody's always going to be in that position, and not always. And if you haven't laid the foundation for when you don't have that authority, a good friend of mine, Keith Ferrazzi, wrote a book just this year called Leading Without Authority. How do you lead when you don't have the authority? Yeah, I love that. That's such a great statement. Thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and I think that comes from the fact that, as difficult as it can seem at times when we were dealing with some of these seemingly out of control egos, at our core, each one of us responds more to good than to bad. And it is more powerful. But sometimes it requires a lot of patience. It requires sometimes putting some of your ego aside. If you are confident enough of knowing who you are and where your value is, then sometimes just being still and quiet when dealing with, and listening, really listening, when you're dealing with someone else whose ego seems to be all over the place, you can make some very good inroads with someone like that. And I learned some of those lessons both the right way and the wrong way. So that I've had some
Which
interesting.
way do you think was more beneficial to you, learning it the right way or the wrong way?
That's a very good question. For me personally, because you get to know yourself better this way, I think it was from learning it the wrong way. Only because how should I express this? The personal pain or emotional upset that came from realizing you handled this in a way that you got some success out of it, but you ended up not treating people the way you wanted to be treated. You succeeded in getting the decision made, or something moved forward, or you succeeded in stopping someone else's craziness. But you realize, when you take a step back, there was a better way of doing that probably could have had a better result. So it took a few times of me reacting more emotionally. And usually that comes from the fact that I was not used to being attacked by other people's ego when they were in, from positions of power, because I naively and innocently thought, hey, we're all in this together. We're trying to make a good movie or good TV series. But other people were, either concerned about how they were being perceived by the public or the studios or the networks, and they had their whole careers on the line, or this was the fear that they carried with them. And when you took enough time to be able to realize it's not all about you, and to take a step back and try to put yourself, at least for a moment, in the other person's shoes, even when they seem to be semi-insane with how they're expressing themselves or what they're doing, it can give you some interesting insight into how to cut through their particular concerns, their fear, and the whatever, and that allows you to solve problems a lot faster and in a healthier way. It didn't come to me all at once, though. I had to learn some good lessons.
I bet. The show MacGyver, anybody who's seen MacGyver knows that it's all about, it really is the epitome of showing resourcefulness, right?
Yeah, it was such a great concept and idea along that line. It was created by a writer named Lee David Zlatoff. And he ended up not really sticking with the show the first season, and he went on to something else. I was brought aboard by Paramount and ABC in the second season to help turn the show around, because ABC really wanted to cancel it because it wasn't doing well in the ratings. And most television series usually take a little bit of time to find their sea legs. And MacGyver was one of those cases. Paramount wisely felt they had a hit on their hands if they can, really get it substantiated and off and running in the right direction. And this is not something that I did by myself. There's a whole team that you are working with, but I was one of the people uh, brought in as one of the showrunners to help turn the show around, and we were able to. And part of it had to do with not only focusing on the resourcefulness you're talking about, but enriching the character of MacGyver, sticking with what made him different. And we had a wonderful star in Richard Dean Anderson to work with, just a terrific guy who was so willing to work hard, and so that was really good, but it was very challenging.
I bet. I mean, I've just seen a few episodes. That's about it. But every one that I watched, it was the resourcefulness, what he had to do, right? But those thoughts, and we talked about it the other day, those thoughts, those actions that he had to take had to be created someplace and then verified that they could
Right.
actually be performed.
Right.
Can you talk about that? Because when you were telling me about that, I thought that was fascinating.
Well, one of the key principles that I wanted to apply to the character in the series, and we all talked about this, was that this MacGyver is a guy who he very much wanted to function by his wits. He did not carry a gun, didn't believe in that, thought you could outthink your way around whatever problems come up. But the thing that I kept talking about, and others, and we really focus on it, is, I said, we're looking at a character who he doesn't look at the problem as just the problem. He starts from the realization that solutions are all around him. And he opens his thought up to the ever-present sense of those solutions. And then how can I apply that to these situations? And some of that comes down to the simple ideas such as a paper clip is not just a paper clip. You can use it to pick locks. You can use it to conduct electricity. You can use it to, there are all sorts of things you can use it for. It's not just a paper clip. That little piece of paper that's a piece of trash thrown on the floor, that's a chewing gum wrapper, you can use that for a lot of different things. What we did many times is, in thinking up the stories and the situations, we would realize, oh, okay, now we've got MacGyver in this situation. What do we do? Well, we would ask ourselves, okay, let's look around. What's the environment we have him in? What's in that environment? What's in this location? What are the things that he would see that he could then use, utilizing his understanding of science and math and also common sense? What are some of the things that he can use to change the nature of the situation, apply the solution? And most of the time, that what was funny that I told you was, I realized, oh my God, I'm actually going to be able to use some of the science and math that I studied in school and never thought I'd be able to apply.
Right.
So all of us on the writing staff, the writing and producing staff, we were the ones who were thinking these situations up with all the elements, and we would come up with what we feel would work. Now, we also had paid technical consultants that were on the series, and they were our last kind of they were our go-to people at the very end of the process. We would then go to them and say, okay, we've got MacGyver in the following situation. Here are the elements around him. Here's how we're using those elements, and here's what we are thinking he'll be able to create to cause either an explosion that moves the door out or something else that changes the nature of the problem to a solution. And we'd say, are we correct? Well, the fun of the show was probably about 85% of the time we were told, yeah, you guys and gals, you're correct. Now, sometimes they'd give us a slight adjustment. They'd say, well, you're expecting this chemical reaction to take place in 10 minutes. It would actually take about 50 minutes, those kind of things. And then sometimes they would tell us, well, you're right, except for the last step. The last step, wouldn't work. You've got to do this instead of that. And sometimes they would give us, when we'd chat with them early on, they would give us some interesting things to think about. And we realized, oh, that is so cool. So then we'd try to, from a backwards standpoint, thinking backwards, we'd work that into the story and then figure out how do we get them in that problem. So it caused us to think both forwards and backwards, but was very challenging. And as I had mentioned to you before, when we filmed what we called the MacGyverisms, which were all the steps of how he did what he did, utilizing the elements around him. We always left one step out, and it had to be a step that was a connected step in one way. We didn't film that because we did not want impressionable children or other people blowing up the family home, or causing some problem because they followed the example specifically. We always left something out for safety reasons.
Did you ever think, or did anyone ever think that the show MacGyver would actually become a verb?
In the beginning, no, and that's pretty cool that it's in the dictionary, to MacGyver something and MacGyverism, and
Crazy.
that's it. It has become, it's been part of our culture, and that was one of the things that Henry Winkler was one of the executive producers, a terrific guy, fun to work with, and Henry's main interest in MacGyver was to keep making sure that all the stories kept the character of MacGyver on track for who he was. Someone who used who used his wits, who didn't have to rely on things that would lead him towards more violence as a solution, and that was really important. Henry had a very good eye for that. He was very helpful in that way, and that was something we all were concentrating on. But it always helps to have as many eyes on the prize as you can get, especially when they're all talented people. But we never, at that stage, we did not think this was going to become we were just trying to survive. We were just trying to, because it was a difficult show to do, and we were just trying to make it the best we can. We knew there was a great idea there, and we just needed to flesh it out, and it worked.
Do you remember who you guys were competing with in time slots?
Oh, wow. Well, we were on Monday nights. At this point, because this was a while ago, I actually don't remember.
Because you guys did well, and you guys, and I know on Monday night it wasn't like you guys were up against nobodies and no names. You guys were still having to compete pretty heavily, and you guys did well for 7 seasons, right?
Yeah, they did. Paramount was right. They knew if it was launched properly and given the chance, they felt they really had a hit, and they were right.
You guys had some guest stars. Come on, you guys had a lot of great guest stars. Can you name maybe one or two of your favorites that you had that came in?
Well, one I can definitely name, because I ended up becoming really good friends with him. We played a lot of golf together. But in the second season, a character was developed, and an episode was done called Jack of Lies. And Bruce McGill was hired to play this character, this longtime friend of MacGyver. And he was so good in this role. And it was an idea that was bounced around by us, and the episode was written and fleshed out by John Sackmar and Carrie Lenhart, who were just beginning writers on staff, but they're terrifically talented. They've gone on to become writer, producer, showrunners themselves, and they wrote this script, and it turned out to be so much fun. We just kept bringing back Bruce back, and he became at one point almost kind of like a semi-regular regular character. So it. And the interesting thing about guest stars is that they have a challenge stepping into, in any series, they have a challenge stepping into the series, because the people that are there, the cast that's already there, in this case it was Richard Dean Anderson and Dana Elcar, they already have a good working vibe between them, and they have to step into this and work very quickly. With the number of series that I have done through the years, it's funny. There are times that I will realize, oh, gee, I worked with with so and so, and then I stopped to think and went, okay, which series was it that we worked together on? And uh, and there have been times when running into someone who said, "Oh, hey, it's great to see you again," and all, and we'd both be staring at each other, going, "Now, which one did we work on together?" Um, but then that goes again to what you were talking about personalities and having to deal with the different personalities, because everybody comes in with kind of a different agenda. There are the people that are being a regular on a television series. That's your home. That's your home base. But then you have these people who are coming in to do just a one shot or maybe more. But their work on that is very crucial to them, because that's going to cause other people to be either interested or not interested in hiring them for other shows or other films.
Yeah.
But it's it in the very beginning of my career, I really enjoyed the opportunity of, I mean, it was great working with Katharine Hepburn. She isn't, it just, she merits the term legend. And she was great to work with, but she had a wonderful sense of humor. In fact, she on one location in Altadena in a backyard, she gathered us together. She'd been a little annoyed about something, and she looked at all of us on the staff and crew there. We wanted to make sure she was happy. She said, "Oh, don't worry about me." She said, "I'm just a crotchety old bitch before I have my coffee at 10 o'clock." So, so a couple days later, when there was a challenge going on with some of the technical equipment, I announced to them, said, "Okay, we're going to allow the crotchety old bitch to go back to her while we fix this problem." And she gave me that Katharine Hepburn look, but as she walked past me, she kind of chuckled and said, "Very good, Bill."
What do you think separates one person? You used the word legend. What do you think makes one person a legend versus another not being?
Wow. Well, Katharine Hepburn was clearly one of the most indomitable people that I have met. Her confidence in herself and her love of what she did was just so palpably powerful. You could feel it. And her determination, I think, was one thing with her. Some people, it's interesting because this is interesting. I've thought about it. I became good friends with Paul Newman through a feature-length documentary I did on racing. And what a terrific person. And yet you couldn't get more famous than Paul Newman.
Right.
And yet Paul in person was a rather shy guy. And yet on screen, of course, he just explodes. And so, incredibly handsome on screen and everything else. And it was, I kept trying to figure out what was it about Paul and because I mean, I'm 6'4", Paul was like 5'9", something. So when I met him, I'd seen him on screen growing up all the time, and I'd seen Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, one of my favorite films, probably 16 times when I was in high school. And when I met Paul, and he said, "Well," we were talking about films, and I told him, "Well, I saw Butch and the Kid about 16 times." He looked at me, he said, "What?" I said, "Why did you do that?" I said, "Well, I really liked it." He said, "Well, yeah, we really liked making it." And with Paul, I don't think he really knew what it was that helped him move into the legendary area. I met Redford later because we both had offices in the same building at Warner Brothers, and he was interested in a screenplay I'd written to possibly direct as a feature film. And it was something that he knew that I was friends with Paul, because it was a project that could have reunited them again after the sting. In meeting Redford, it was different than Newman, because I hung out with Paul Newman for all the time doing this film, many months traveling across the US and Canada at these racetracks. And he, you knew you were with a famous person and everything else, but he came across as just a regular guy. Redford it came across differently. That you could cut the charisma with Redford with a knife. He just was always, and he wasn't doing anything. He just was always on. And my sister worked as assistant associate costume designer on Road to Perdition, that starred Paul Newman and Tom Hanks and
Sure.
Daniel Craig and Jude Law, a great cast.
What a cast.
And the great Conrad Hall was the director of photography. Sam Menges was the director. And people would go down to watch Conrad Hall, including Paul Newman and Tom Hanks, watch him light the set, because it was like watching one of the Dutch masters paint with light. But my sister said one of the things she loved doing was to make sure that she was on the set just before Sam would call for, positions, places, and action, because she said you would see Paul and Tom Hanks sitting quietly by themselves on an upended apple box and just sitting there. And she said you wouldn't give them a second thought, because they were just, you wouldn't look over and say, oh, that's Paul Newman and Tom Hanks. I mean, obviously you recognize them, but they were just two guys sitting there. But when Places was called, she said you could literally see a switch thrown in each one of them. And you literally said to yourself, oh my God, that's Paul Newman and Tom Hanks. And I saw that happen with Paul. At the end of the race season, Budweiser sponsored his race team. And at the end of the race season, they sponsored the entire season. And so they threw a big banquet, and us on the film crew, I was producing this documentary. A friend of mine was directing it. And I had also written this thing. And so we were invited to this banquet. So everyone's kind of dressed up, and we're talking in the middle of this ballroom. And all of a sudden I see all the heads turn and look towards the two front doors. And I think, what the hell? What is everybody looking at? And I turn and look, and Paul Newman with a couple people had just walked in the door, and he's in a tux. And he just walked in the door, and out loud, I said, I didn't even know I was saying, I went, holy shit, that's Paul Newman. Because what walked in the door was the movie star. He had, and you couldn't take your eyes off him. So there is something, Sidney Pollack called it the it factor. And he said, you never really, and his definition was, you never really knew what it was, but you knew when you saw it. And he said at one point, he said, if you want to see what it's like to be invisible, go have lunch with Robert Redford. That was, and I could see that was true, because when I met Redford, he pulled up in his Porsche as I was coming down from my office and going over to his office at Wildwood Enterprises. And I saw him, and I walked up to shake his hand, introduce myself. I had not seen him before. And that it factor was already in place. And you realize, oh, this is a movie star. So it is a mystery as to, what that it is. But as far as actors, those that really transcend into another level, it's the combination of talent. And I think my sense is it's a combination of letting go of ego self and them being really centered in a deeper sense of self, the more powerful
Tough thing to do, to let go of ego self.
Yeah, it sure is.
How have you, my experience with you has just been nothing but just so appreciative of who you are. And
thank you.
And I think, how did you get to this point where you've had all this success? You've worked with all these different people. You've been hit shows, and now you're at this point in your life where you're writing a play, right?
Writing novels, actually.
A novel. Yeah. And you just seem to have your ego really in check, and your life just seems to be going in the direction you want it to. And how do you think you've gotten there?
Well, some of it I know comes from things that I clearly learned from how I was raised by my parents, both my sister and I. We realized we got very fortunate. We We had two parents, they've both passed at this point. I think about them every day, but who they loved each other. They had a 52-year marriage, a happy marriage. I mean, not everything was ever totally 100% perfect, but they were happy because they liked each other and they loved each other. They were each other's best friends. So we saw that growing up. That was enormous help. And um, I felt raised by really good principles and instilled with this is how you live. This is what you do. This is what you don't do from the standpoint of how you treat others. Um, but uh, having a strong ego, a healthy ego, is definitely something that can help you navigate the entertainment business. So I the lessons that I learned that helped me along those lines, again, both good lessons and bad lessons, or tougher lessons, let's say,
Right.
um, was really being able to, at times, get quiet and ask yourself, well, who am I really? Am I my job? Am I the car that I drive, or the house or apartment I live in, or whatever? And that's tough, especially in the entertainment business, because that so many people are trying to one up each other. Oh, I just bought a Jaguar today. Oh, you did? Oh, I just bought the new Mercedes, or or now I have the house on the top of the hill, or and that still goes on, and that can be very destructive. Um, and uh, I I think you have to be able to find a quiet sense of confidence within yourself, of knowing some sense of your own value. We are each unique. We each have something to contribute in the way of service, in the way of our presence, that nobody else can do the way we can do it. And I think that comes out the best when we are able to do what we love. And that doesn't always mean that's the job you're doing. There are some jobs that you do it as a job because this is how you're earning your paycheck at the time. There were some projects that I worked on that weren't exactly what I wanted to do, but overall I was doing what I love. And some people do what they love. They work at a particular job, but then on the side, they are doing something that they love, whatever that is, some additional thing. And I think that's when we really start to connect with our own sense of value. I saw I was watching on my phone a clip from the Graham Norton show, a very funny English host. And Matt Damon was the guest in this particular clip. And he was being asked questions about what it was like when he and Ben Affleck won the Oscars for writing Good Will Hunting. And his response was terrific because he said, well, he said, both Ben and I had been in the industry for a while and as actors trying to make it, trying to get going. But this was a world shaking difference, of event for us. First time we'd ever been to the Oscars. They both brought their mothers as their guests. But Matt Damon realized that he was very fortunate to realize something at that age. He was 27 at that time, and Affleck was 25. But he imagined himself, wow, what if I had been working my whole life just for this moment, just to get this Oscar? And I was 85, and I finally got this Oscar, and that's what I was really driving for all the time. He suddenly realized how empty that was, if that's the only reason you were doing things. And so he realized he was really grateful, obviously, to have won the Oscar. It just opened up, he and Ben's career. But he was able to put that sense of it in the proper place, that didn't define who he was. And the qualities that he expressed as a person would be more defining of who he was. And that is one of the challenges in our American society. We are so obsessed with celebrity. We are so obsessed with success as it equates to finances and as it equates to how well known you are and what are the things you've achieved. And we each individually need to define for ourselves what is success, because that's going to be directly connected to what is happiness to you.
Absolutely.
And if we're chasing the wrong things, that can that can be something that we end up not experiencing the fullness of life. And I went through that earlier, when I was younger, because there was a period of time that I thought, well, I'll be really happy when I get my first directing assignment, or I'll be really happy when I make my first film, or fortunately, I was able to catch myself for the most part, not 100%, but for the most part, and realize, no, we are all only ever living in the present moment right now. So if I'm going to be happy, I need to find happiness right now, wherever I am, whatever I'm doing. And when I look back, some really fun times that I had in the entertainment business, believe it or not, was when I was working in the mailroom at Universal Studios at the very, very beginning of my career, because I met an unbelievable amount of people and became friends with some of them, like Burt Lancaster and Anthony Hopkins. And because I pulled them into a project that I was doing, and Tony Hopkins would call he'd call the studio and said, well, I left word at your office, and I kept having to tell him, Tony, my office is it was the mailroom. Later on, I did find an empty office and did open up a secret office for myself on the lot, and I was trying to put this project together. And then Burt Lancaster was also trying to help me with that, because I wanted him to be one of the stars of it. But I was in way over my head, but at least I was learning. Yeah. But some of the fun things that came out of that experience, and that was at a time that I kept wondering, am I ever going to make it? Am I ever going to get a chance to prove myself? I can't I don't want to deliver the mail for the rest of my, career. I could have had that job forever, but that's also where I realized I found the commitment to some of the determination to do what I really, really loved and just not give up. But finding that ever present sense of being happy in the present moment now, I have learned through the years that is so vital, because in the entertainment business, you're going to have good years, you're going to have lean years, you're going to have ups, downs, you'll be in, you'll be out, you'll be hot, you'll be cold. You have to learn to be happy, or at least at peace with all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. One of the next level pillars I teach is that the minute we say, I'll be happy when, precludes us ever being happy until then.
Yeah, you're so right. And that,
learn how to be happy now, and then we're way ahead of the game.
Well, and then what happens when you get to then?
Yes.
Then you're saying to yourself, oh, well, okay, now I'm at then, but now what?
Right.
So it's like, it starts all over again. So
so true.
That tells us the power of the sense of the present, which is really, even though quantum physics tells us that the past, the present, and the future all exist at the same time, we really only experience the present fully. There are times we'll find ourselves in the present, contemplating, worrying, thinking, or dreaming about the future, or thinking fondly about the past, or traumatically about the past, but it's still in the present. And I think being able to kind of on a daily basis remind ourselves of that is something that can really really bring more peace to our days.
Yeah. I love those thoughts, Bill. You've inspired me many times in just our recent conversations, but I still reflect back on and I just saw Lynn just entered the room, but
yeah, I saw
she reflect back on
Hi, Lynn.
meeting with Lynn. We're going to bring her on in just a second. But Bill, one of the things I love about what I'm learning even more about you is the depth of who you are versus your life maybe in Hollywood, or your life on a set, but really the depth. And when we started talking again, I said, where are you? And we found out we're like 15 minutes apart from each other.
Right.
20 minutes or so. And I just think that's hilarious. But your life today is different than it was then. And what do you think are the benefits of life today? Because now you're writing this novel, and What do you think are the benefits of your life now versus then?
Well, I wouldn't say, and I knew you were just choosing that word. I would not say versus in the sense that against what it was before. I think it is all part of the ongoing journey in life. William Butler Yeats there's a great line from one of his poems. Does the imagination dwell the most upon a woman won or a woman lost? And that's actually the theme of one of the books that I'm writing. But it was also something of a screenplay that I wrote. And to me, the answer is it's the time spent getting there. And so what is different now is that I had to go through a very interesting transition in this way. I think I have a more peaceful sense of where I am at now because I have wrapped my arms about this is where I am at now. I am going to fully enjoy it, and I am going to do what my heart tells me I really want to do. Because I realized in the past that a number of jobs that I did, projects that I worked on, they were what were presented to me. They had the paychecks attached to them. They had the prestige attached to them, but they weren't always exactly what I wanted to do from my heart. They weren't exactly the stories of the things that I wanted to tell. I now realize I have the opportunity to do that, but it has required stepping back, or let's say stepping off of the constant treadmill of being in constant production. Because I did that for 20 years. And now I am experiencing, by stepping back, by actually saying no to more things and not pursuing it with the same, absolutely intense drive, I have been able to actually step back and, I hesitate to say smell the roses, but, that cliche, but by saying no to more things and really allowing myself to ask the question, what do I really want to do? How do I really want to express myself? But that took realizing, okay, you may not always be on the top of the pyramid as hot as you were at one point. But to also recognize the strangeness of that. When I was one of the hottest guys in television, I was having lunch one day in a restaurant where they had the high back booths. And so you couldn't always see the people who would be, on the other side of you. And there were several conversations going around near my booth, and I was waiting for the person I was having lunch with to come. And I was hearing the voices of all these young development executives, and they were all talking about, and this which kind of flipped me out at the time, they were talking about me. They were saying, "Oh yeah, I know Bill. Oh yeah, I'm playing tennis with him next week," or "Oh yeah, we're gonna have lunch, and he's on my call list. We're gonna get projects going with him." I didn't know any. I'd never met any of those people. Because when I stood up to go to the restroom and I turned and looked over and went, I've never met any of them. They were all acting as if they were my longtime buddies, because that's what gave them the sense of being in the know, because they knew me. But that's only because at that time I was hot. So at this particular time, I've been in the business now a long time. I don't have that same level of heat, but what I do have is I am so thoroughly enjoying what I'm doing, because I'm doing what my heart tells me to do. And whether that becomes something that is financially successful or not, it's something I know I need to get out. And my first mentor in the business was Rod Serling, who was a dear friend. He was a visiting professor, professional in residence at my college, Ithaca College, when he would come back from Hollywood for a break, because his family had a house on Lake Cayuga. Ithaca sits in the south end of that lake. And he told me, and he also told us in the seminars he taught, you are a writer when you are at the point where you have to get something out. You have to tell the story. It's more than want. It's something you have to do. And I realize I'm at that point of what I want to do. And when you are working on something from that way, I think you have to give up all outlining of how this is going to work out. That's the universe's job. You do what you love, and the universe will find a way. Stephen King did that. He does his meat and potatoes writing work, the work that he's contracted to. He does that in the morning or whatever, but he always allows time somewhere in the day, afternoon or wherever, where he writes something just for himself. And he tells himself it doesn't have to become anything, not anything. It could be an essay, it could be a letter, it could be a novella, it could be a book. But it doesn't have to get published. It doesn't have to go anywhere. Some of the things he started in that ended up becoming wonderful. One of them was the short story, well then novella, Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, which became the movie The Shawshank Redemption, one of my favorites. So there's an example of doing something from the heart that ends up touching everybody else.
Yeah. Well, let's bring on our mutual friend, because she does everything from her heart, and
That's
she
for
does it
sure.
with such style and charisma and just passion. I just love this girl, and I know you do too. So go ahead, Lynn, and unmute yourself and bring yourself on camera. There she is, Lynn Rose.
Hello.
Hi, Lynn.
Lynn, we already talked about you earlier, but now we
Oh.
get to have people put a name with a face. But this is Lynn Rose, and I know Bill thinks extremely highly of her, as I do, and I'm just grateful for her friendship. And I texted her earlier today. I said, I just want to tell you thank you again for introducing me to Bill all those years ago, and he's going to be on tonight. So I sent her the link, and she said, I've got a meeting, but I'm going to hop on when I get done. So thanks for hopping on.
Oh my goodness, thank you. And yeah, I'm sure everyone, of course, I came in just now, so I missed all the brilliance I'm sure that was shared, but you can feel Bill's heart, you know, how his mind works, the creative mind, but how philosophy of life too. And Bill, I just so treasure your friendship
Me
and the
too.
times we've been able to share, whether that's sailing or coming over to parties or just deep conversations, and your insights and how you look at the world. So thank you for who you are. And Bill, oh my God, Bob, sorry. Bob Donnell. I took the last part of your name and the first part of your name, and it became Bill suddenly. So anyway, Bob, it's been so many years too, and all that you've been through and all that you share. So it's a joy to be here, and I just wanted to tune in. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Bill and I talked about taking the WOW class, and I was recounting to the group about how you had us sit facing each other, and you made the comment, something to the effect that many of you men to men facing, looking eye to eye, probably this might be the first time that you've ever done it, and how uncomfortable it could be. And I remember it, and Bill remembered it as well. But I think that was such a powerful exercise, and I've really recounted that many times in my life about what that was like. So, and then the other thing I think I took away from that class was standing when you first take the stage, standing and just standing there, and how vulnerable you feel and how awkward you feel because you think you just got to start speaking. And that's something that I've really treasured and used in my speaking career ever since then. So thank you for that gift. But thank you so much for the introduction to Bill, because he is a true, as you are, true gem and great mentions.
Well, I will also say to people, not that Lynn has arrived directly, if you ever have an opportunity to take a seminar with her, a webinar, and especially if you ever see her perform, she is the most amazing singer performer you can imagine. I have seen her in just blow the roof off places with her performance. And this has been an interesting journey for her along those lines. And I have learned so much from what Lynn has shared about the confidence and courage that she has found by listening to her heart and going forward. And boy, it just shines when she's on stage. So if you ever have a chance, definitely check out what Lynn has to offer through her sites and programs and projects. You will be blessed to partake.
Yes, agreed.
May I say something real quick? Is that
Sure.
all right,
Absolutely.
guys?
Absolutely.
Because I just want to mark this with two dear men in my life and new friends that are here in the room. You know, we have evolution of who we are as we grow, or we connect dots as we look back and how they all added up. And I actually am at a whole new evolution in my life, and taking all my experience and connections and different worlds I've played in together. But we actually are now finally launching its project that I've been working on for years and years. And it is positive social media that is designed to drive global change. And it's a holding page at wowmakernow.com. You can learn more about it. But my heart is so full because one of the things I've always loved to do is connect and collaborate. And one of the essences of this platform is how we can collaborate together, how we can build up each other. So I mean, I won't make this talking about the platform. You can see that at wowmakernow.com. But I mean, it's just everything that I stand for, and it's a solution that as people get inside and see, and there's a lot of innovations inside it too. And we're launching to hundreds of millions of people and through different partners. So I mean, I'm very, very excited, but it's something that has withstood having to stand through the fire while handling all the other things that were happening in life. And now it's finally here. And it's one of those things that COVID kind of forced to make happen. You're like, okay, I'm going to go all in and burn all the other ships and go all in now so that this can give the focus it needed to go to now the phase of where it's finally launching all the way.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm
that
gonna
really is awesome.
We'll put it in the tag down at the bottom so people can go check that out as well. And then this will be put into our Facebook group as well, a private group. So people will be, it'll cycle through them as well. And they'll make comments and they'll ask questions and stuff. So I'll make both of you guys members of the group so that you can interact with people as well. But yeah, thanks for sharing that, Lynn. That's awesome.
Yeah. Because also Bill even touched on, like, when you have a passion project or something you believe, especially in our entertainment business, oh boy, what sometimes a thankless business that can be. But where, like, it took, what is it, how many years? 10 years to make Princess Bride. It took 30 years, I think, for Queen's Gambit or something. Something crazy. But when you stand for that vision, you're willing to go through whatever bumps and roads and challenges, and you make it happen. You see it through, because it's not over until you give up. So anyway, and I know Bill has had to do that with many projects he's brought to the table. So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
I love that. Thank you. Well, I'm gonna let you guys go ahead and bring yourself on if you want to come on camera. If you have a question, feel free. You can ask the question. We've been doing this for 11 years now. And for 11 years, we've had a private dinner once a month where I bring in a guest of honor like one of you and just allow them to share their story. And we've had people like Les Brown and Keith Ferrazzi and Jarek Robbins and Tommy Baylor and Gary Goldstein. We've had, a lot of great people that come in and they just share their story and we just have dinner together. But obviously the last year we couldn't do that. So we've been doing everything virtually. But again, we've got people on here. I'm looking at some of the people, Dr. Bill Janishak. When I started this 11 years ago, I started it because I was speaking in his office. And I had a group of people there and I said, how many guys, if I held a dinner once a month, and I brought in like a Keith Ferrazzi or somebody, how many guys would like to come to that dinner? And people raise their hand, and that started this 11 years ago. So it's been a fun ride and we're just having a great time. And now we're able to do things virtually, which is really kind of cool because, a lot of people weren't able to come to Orange County to be a part of or to be a guest of honor. And now we've been able to have guest of honors anywhere in the world. And so it's been really fun. We had a guest of honor that was from Amsterdam. And so that was really a blast, so it's kind of fun. But that being said, Dr. Bill Janishak, you got anything you want to say? I mean, since you're front and center right there in the middle.
Yeah, I always have something to say because I always find these interesting. And, I think part of since I was here from the beginning, it's your questions, Bob. I mean, Bill was saying, oh, that's a good question, Bob. And I'm thinking in the back, of course it's a good question. Bob always gets good questions. But Bill, I have a question for you because it was just done on me. You gave the Matt Damon story and then kind of your own reflections. And it kind of reminds me of the hero's journey. You kind of got to go through, the big ordeal and the call to adventure. And then you kind of come back as a changed person. And I'm a big fan of the hero's journey. Do you believe, and you said finally to get to your purpose, because, then Lynn was talking, kind of reiterating the fact of when you have that purpose-driven life, do you think you have to go through the journey to realize that you know, I went through all that and that's not what it's about. I thought it was about that, but it's really about what's inside me? Or do you think you can shortcut that?
Well, that also is a very good question.
I'm a disciple of Bob.
I think I do think you can shortcut that, but only from the standpoint if you are able to recognize that from a level of understanding. And it's the understanding that is important. And sometimes that understanding comes from, as you said, making that hero's journey. Joseph Campbell has some wonderful things to tell us. His work is just marvelous. So if you, for a lot of us, the experience is what brings us the understanding to be able to truly find our purpose. But those that are able to let go of, I will say, the false sense of our ego early on, maybe you can move faster along that journey. You know, it's always interesting to me to see the relevant connection between things, certain statements, let's say from the Bible, to statements from people like Joseph Campbell, to many other works, such as, you know, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That sense of we are, and I'm not talking about this from a religious sense. I'm talking about this now from a more a philosophical sense, from more a spiritual instinct of it, is that with some of the things you're talking about, we're getting to that understanding, the hero's journey, finding our purpose. It's more reaching that point of revelation than creation, because that sense has already been created. It's just there for us to discover. And so I think this inner journey is one of the most important. And why it's so challenging to so many of us is because the stimulus that we get from the outer journey, the world that we see around us, seems so relenting. But it's very fascinating to me when, you know, Einstein said, there really is no matter. It's all energy. And the quantum physicists have now, as we know, you know, when I was a kid, the atom had a solid nucleus and all these little electrons flying around it. So you think, okay, well, there's some solidity there. But now we are really learning it's all space. It's all really energy. They've broken it down to such tiny levels that there's nothing there. They really say, okay, it is simultaneously a particle and a wave, the wave being energy. But the particle is only present if it's if observed, right? Which is that's a mind trip in and of itself. So with Einstein saying that means, okay, well, wait a minute. We see this matter all around us, and yet what the reality sense of this is telling us is that's illusion. That's illusion. So the quantum physicists, one of the leading theory edges now is that the construct of the universe is not little quarks and atoms and molecules and things. It's consciousness. And through consciousness, we literally can control what it is we see and experience. And I don't know if I mentioned this to you, Bob, when we had connected the other week, but a story that always sticks with me because it keeps reminding me, stay open, stay open. Don't just take in what the five senses are telling you as reality. There was a study done, or there was posted in the New York Times in the mid-'80s, I think it was. There was a group of doctors who were doing a study on multiple personality disorder, and the study was to learn how can they best serve these people, help these people. But there were a couple things that happened that they did not expect that really kind of blew their minds and took some of their thinking process in a different direction. There were two patients. One had all the symptoms of full-blown diabetes, bad case, and was being treated during the time that they were in this study. But when the dominant personality, who knew that they had diabetes, left the person's consciousness and a different personality came in that had no idea that they had diabetes, the doctors saw all the symptoms disappear. And when that person was tested for those symptoms, nothing. There was another patient that had a lifelong scar. But when that personality left the consciousness and a personality came into that person's feeling and consciousness and thinking that had no idea they'd ever been in that accident, to the amazement and shock of the doctors, they watched the scar disappear.
Whoa.
When the dominant personality came back, so did the scar. In the other person, so did the diabetes. So what that clearly was telling these people, as hard as it was for them to swallow, was that consciousness constructs our experience.
Mm.
Now, the impact of the five physical senses is so strong that you don't want to walk out in the street and stand in front of a Mack truck and say, hey, this is, all just energy, this matter is nothing, because you'll wind up as a hood ornament. But I think this is the type, to me, this is the type of hero's journey that you're talking about, which I think is wonderful, that this element of it should be part of our thinking, where we are always questioning ourselves. Okay, what am I taking in as reality? Where is my consciousness and my feeling? Because if we really can have control over our lives that way, excuse me, sorry, that's something we should think about.
Yes.
That's something we should entertain, the possibility of that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's it's interesting. I've seen studies as well, just like that, where people with the personality and their eye color changes right in front of you and it comes back. And it's interesting because I deal with the meat suit. I'm a chiropractor, functional medicine, functional neurology. So I deal with meat suit stuff, the Newtonian stuff. But what really heals the people is the consciousness component, because it's not until they believe to even take the action to get the result, but it's all Newtonian. So very interesting. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's a really good question, and clearly the impact of the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell's work is something that's had a definite impact on how I work in the world of story, but it's also had an impact on just my sense of how to look at elements of life. So glad you brought that up.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Flo, you got a question? It looks like you're live.
Yes, it's actually from Tony. She's unable to come on. She would like to know, Bill, what was your definition of success at the beginning of your career versus what it is today?
Another good question. Well, at the very beginning, initially, I can remember when I was in the mailroom at Universal, my definition of success was getting a chance to prove myself by being able to make movies or television shows, get out of the mailroom and actually be a functioning member of the world of making movies or making TV shows, because there's something I felt I wanted to say. I wanted to participate in that. As I stepped into that, because I literally left the mailroom to go make this movie with Katharine Hepburn. It was an independent feature film, and I ended up, the director was someone I met on the lot, delivered his mail. And he became intrigued because he realized that I had set up my own office at the studio, and I had Burt Lancaster and Anthony Hopkins committed to a project that I was developing. And I was just what was I then? I had just turned 24, just out of college, 23, 24. And, a kid. But I was trying to move forward as best I could. So he was intrigued by that, and he actually gave me a copy of the script and said, "Tell me what you think about this." And it was a charming little family movie, and I had a group of doctors that I had approached about my project, but they were too nervous to deal with this 23, 24-year-old kid, even though I had these two stars committed. But I ended up helping him pull some of the financial elements and some other things together to help get the project off the ground. I mean, he had already made great progress himself, so he brought me aboard as like associate producer, working with the main producer on the project. So from that point on, though, then my sense of success was, okay, I have to do more of this. And as success came in and as the money came in, one of the challenges at that point was to think, okay, this is success, because I was being told you're now successful. You're doing things that people are seeing. You're now in the know. People want to work with you. Your paychecks are getting bigger. This seemed to be success. But I had some experiences where at one point I was producing a hit network television series that was seen all over the world. And I was making more money than I had ever made before. But because of the particular challenges on that series, because of some of the egos, Bob, that you were talking about, one ego in particular that was driving everyone at the studio, the network, and us on staff crazy, it was a very unhappy experience. And yet the world would look at that and say, wow, this guy's successful.
Right.
So cut to now, today, I have really come to realize that the best definition of success for me is to be able to embrace what is making me happy, do I have the ability to follow through in doing what I love, whatever that is. That's now more my sense of success, and is what I'm doing something that can be of benefit to others. That's what has been challenging and it took me a while to get to this exact place, because what I had to do with this is I had to remove the money element from my sense of success. And I had to remove any prestige element from that sense of success, because that can go to your head. And at first it goes to your head in a seemingly a fun way. It's like, whoa, this is cool. This is nice. But then you realize that that's kind of like considering the icing on the cake, the whole cake. It's nice, but you can't have that be everything. You can't have that be, because it's too ephemeral. It can fade. So that took me a little while. I had to go through some of being able to put that sense of fame within the business or prestige and the money that came with it. I had to be able to look at that and say, okay, grateful that I'm experiencing these things, but that can't be my definition of success, because it will not always be there.
Well said. So,
And
Flo, are you asking a question for yourself too, or were you
Thank
just
you.
asking for Tony?
No, I'm just, oh, God, I can't believe the time just went really fast. So thank you.
Thank you for that question, Tony. I can't see you on screen, but thank you for that question. That was a very, very good one. And it's a powerful question for us all to ask ourselves, because I think it goes right to the heart of the kind of life that we're allowing ourselves to have. If we are always chasing some definition of success that just has those physical aspects to it, finances and fame or this or that, it can be an empty journey if we're always chasing that.
Yeah.
Even though we don't realize it at the time.
Very true.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing today. Thank you.
Well, I see you brought yourself on. Do you have a question or a comment or an aha?
Just a real quick comment. I've been writing like crazy. Enjoy what my heart tells me to do. The universe will find a way. If that is not the most simple wisdom of happiness, thank you so much for sharing that, Bill.
Well, you're welcome. You're very welcome. Thanks for being here.
And a pleasure.
Well, I told Bill it was going to be only about an hour, and we're already over that. So I want to let him get out of here. But guys, I hope what you did was you took a lot of notes, and I hope what you will do now with those notes is that you start applying them. I know that my biggest ahas have been the ones that I've taken action on and implemented. And then some of my could have been biggest ahas were ones that I forgot because I didn't take any action. So maybe share these out with your, your friends. Is one of the best things I found is when we learn something, if we teach it to somebody else, it starts to be integrated into our lives so much faster and so much easier. So maybe doing something like that. Lots of notes, Flo said. So Bill, I just want to tell you, thank you again for taking the time to hop on. I can't wait for us to sit down and just have a cup of coffee and
I look forward to that.
And meeting your wife. And Lynn, as always, I appreciate you immensely. I value you as my friend and respect you, have so much respect for you and who you are. And so thank you for that friendship, and thank you for the introduction to Bill 12 years ago or whatever it was. And but that being said, guys, I'm going to look for the invite to be a part of the group. You'll get that in Facebook, and just, you can be a part anytime you want. You can sit in on any of these that we do. I do one every Monday morning, 10 to 11. And then I do one on the third Thursday of every month, which is what this one is. So that being said, guys, I appreciate you guys. Everyone get out there, make it a great week, and enjoy your next level, everyone.
Thank you so much, Bob, for inviting me. This has been fun. And thank you to all who showed up. And Lynn,
Mwah.
So good to see you. So good to see you guys. Thank you.
All right, guys. Bye-bye.
bye.
You've been listening to Your Next Level Now with Bob Donnell. To find out more, call us at 949-542-6398. That's 949-542-6398. Or you can find more information on our website at everythingnextlevel.com. That's everythingnextlevel.com.